Tonight, you do not need to try to fall asleep. You do not need to force your mind to be still, and you certainly do not need to push away the thoughts drifting through. Just lie down, relax, and let the night embrace you. Each breath is like a small wave gently washing over the peaceful shore of your soul. Each word is a breeze softly brushing against your eyelids, guiding you back to the safest place within yourself. All day long you have tried, you have given, and you have carried more than your share. But now there is no one left who needs you to be strong. Nothing needs to be perfect anymore. Here in this quiet space, all you need to do is breathe slowly, deeply. Feel your body begin to soften, your shoulders lighten, and your heart release the fast rhythm of the daytime. There is nothing you need to do. Just be here and let peace find its way to you. If tonight's stories and sounds help ease your mind, remember, you can return to this place anytime. Each evening, we will meet here again within these gentle stories where sleep becomes a journey of healing. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so that each night as you close your eyes, you can hear words that calm your spirit and remind you that peace has never left your side. Now take a slow breath in and let it out gently. Everything is ready. Let us begin tonight's journey. 3 hours of mindful sleep meditation. Release and heal. And now, as your breathing slows and your thoughts begin to fade like morning mist, let me tell you the first story of the night. A simple story, yet within it lies a gentle reminder that even nature knows how to rest, how to let go, and return to its true flow. Imagine yourself standing by the riverbank, the surface of the water, reflecting the soft light of the moon. The sound of the flowing water is slow and smooth, just like your breath in this moment. There once was a river that rushed endlessly forward, never knowing how to stop. It believed that only by moving faster could it ever reach the ocean. But one day, it grew tired, and it stopped. And in that stillness, it heard the whispers of the earth, the wind, and of its own spirit. That is where the story begins. The river that learned to rest. The first story. The river that learned to rest. Night falls over a small valley in northern Vermont. Pale moonlight drapes across the surface of the water like a soft ribbon. On the riverbank, the scent of dry grass hangs sweet in the air, while the sound of crickets blends with the flow of the river into a slow, soothing melody. There is a river winding through the town born from distant mountains, where the ice melts at the start of spring. From the moment it was just a small stream, it always believed it had to move quickly. It had to rush past the rocks race toward the sea and keep flowing without pause to have any meaning. So it went day and night, through meadows, through pine forests, through countless bends, never stopping to see itself. One early autumn morning, while mist still clung to the low branches, the river reached a quiet hollow. The banks were soft with grass, and the air was thick with the scent of fallen leaves. There, an old man often sat alone on a small wooden chair, holding a notebook and a warm cup of coffee. He did not fish, nor did he paint. He simply watched the water. As the river rushed past him, it heard the old man whisper, "You must be tired, are you not?" Of course, water cannot speak, but the river felt those words drop into its depths like a pebble. It did not know why, but for the first time, it wanted to slow down. It edged into a wide spot along the bank where the water was still enough to reflect the sky. It listened to the wind brushing through the grass, the soft steps of a deer in the woods, the quiet creak of someone's door opening gently. Every sound felt like a breath. The river realized that for so long in its own race, it had not heard anything beyond the noise of hurry. The next day, the old man came back sitting in the same spot. He spoke as if to a friend. No river needs to rush to reach the sea. Every stream has its own rhythm. The river said nothing, but deep within it felt the stones along its bed become cooler, more comfortable. It began to learn how to breathe by slowing down. When the rains came, the river rose. It grew stronger, but this time it did not let urgency take over. Instead of crashing into rocks, it curved around them. It floated past tree roots instead of breaking through. Its sound softened, no longer fierce, but more like someone telling a story. In a nearby house, a little girl looked out the window and said to her mother, "Mom, the river sounds like it is singing today." Winter arrived, and ice began to spread across the surface, forming a clear, glassy layer. People thought the river had fallen asleep, but beneath the ice, it still moved slowly and warmly. It learned that even when surrounded by silence, it was still alive, still flowing. The old man no longer came to the river each day, but he left a message in his notebook on the windowsill. The river never stops. It simply learns to move in silence. Then, spring returned. The ice melted and the water sparkled again. Along the bank, tiny purple flowers stretched toward the light. The river no longer felt in a hurry. It still flowed, still moved toward the sea, but it no longer counted every mile. It understood now, reaching the sea was not as important as learning to listen to the journey. It had seen mornings where light slipped through the mist like silk, had heard children laughing as they skipped. Stones had realized it was beautiful, even when still. One afternoon, the old man returned. His hair was whiter than before. He sat on the wooden chair, saying nothing. The river gently raised a small wave, brushing against the toe of his shoe, as if to say hello. He smiled, his eyes full of knowing, and nodded quietly. Finally, after many months, the river met the sea. It did not crash into it like a flood, but merged into the salty water with a long, deep breath, like someone who has found a place to rest. The ocean did not ask how long it had traveled. It did not praise, and it did not judge. It simply opened its arms, letting sweet and salty waters blend. In that moment, the river understood it never had to run to prove anything. The moment it paused and listened, it found what it had been searching for all along: peace. The night in the town turned still once more. The sound of the river flowed like a heartbeat deep beneath the ground. Somewhere, someone closed out a long day, placed a hand on their chest, and took a slow breath. Perhaps in that moment, they too heard the river. Within themselves, a quiet whisper saying, "It is okay. You can rest now." Not because you are weak, but because you deserve the silence. Outside the window, moonlight still falls upon the water, gentle and patient. And the river, after all its rushing seasons, had finally learned the most important lesson: that moving fast is not always living. Sometimes it is only when we stop that we truly return to ourselves. The second story: The Lamp in the House on the Hill. On a small hill on the outskirts of town, there stood an old wooden house, its roof leaning slightly to the south, like an elderly person listening quietly to the wind. That house had only one lamp. Each evening, as the mist began to fall, the lamp was lit, and its pale yellow light filtered through the window, spilling out onto the yard covered in dry leaves. People in the town grew so used to that sight that if ever a night passed without the lamp glowing, they felt as though something small but essential was missing. The man who lived in that house was Amos, a tall, slender man in his 70s, with eyes that always held a calmness like the surface of an autumn lake. He had been a lighthouse keeper for 30 years along the eastern coast, where wind and salt wore down even iron and loneliness. After retiring, he left the sea behind and bought the old house on the hill, to live out the rest of his days. Many people asked why he chose a place without waves, without boats, without anything familiar. He would simply smile and say, "Sometimes, to keep the light alive, you have to step away from the sea." The lamp in his house was not some modern electric fixture. It was an old oil lamp, cleaned daily with care. Each evening, as dusk deepened, he would refill the oil strike his small lighter, and the flame would come alive like an old friend waiting patiently to be called. The light was never too bright, but it held a warmth and softness that only those who have known loneliness could truly understand. Amos would sit beside the window, pour himself a cup of black tea, and look out over the field that rolled gently to the base of the hill. He said, watching the light drift through the mist reminded him of ships long ago, back when people found their way not by compass, but by a small dot of light on the horizon. One evening, there was a knock at the door. When he opened it, he saw a young woman, a dusty backpack slung over her shoulder, eyes tired but kind. She said she was a traveler who had lost her way when her car broke down on the slope below. He welcomed her in and poured her a cup of tea. The small room smelled faintly of pine oil and lamp smoke. She sat quietly for a long time before finally asking, "Are you ever afraid of being lonely?" He looked at the lamp, his voice dropping low. "Yes, I am. But I have learned that light does not need to be seen to have meaning. It just needs to be lit." She said nothing more. That night, she slept on the long couch while Amos sat by the window. The lamp stayed burning quietly, lighting them both through the long night. The next morning, as the first sunlight touched the house, she left. Before she went, she wrote a note on a small piece of paper. "Thank you for your lamp. It lit something in me, even before the darkness came." Amos folded the note and tucked it into his old journal, the same one where he had recorded thousands of days by the sea. Then he cleaned the lamp again, added more oil, and set it back on the table, as if afraid the light might grow lonely without something to do. That winter was colder than any in recent years. Snow piled thick upon the roof, and the road up the hill nearly vanished. People in town assumed he would come down to escape the cold, but the lamp still glowed every night. A delivery driver said that from far off through the snow, he could still see a small light on the hilltop, unwavering, even in the harsh wind. Folks began to say that the lamp helped travelers find their way through the night road. What they did not know was that Amos, in his small house, was also using that light to keep from losing himself. One night, a great snowstorm swept through. Winds howled, the roof shuddered, and the lamp flickered wildly. Amos rushed to it, shielding the flame with his hands. The hot oil burned his skin, but he did not pull away. He held firm, refusing to let the light go out. When the wind finally calmed, he sat back down, hands trembling, but eyes brighter than ever. He understood then the lamp was not just lighting the room. It was holding a piece of his memory, the memory of all the years he had kept the light burning for others at sea. Now there were no ships, no ocean, but the habit remained. That little light, though small, was enough to remind him he was still living for something. The next morning, the sky cleared. Snow covered the entire hill like a giant winter blanket. A group of hikers passed by and saw the lamp still glowing despite the freezing wind. They stopped to take photos, then quietly said that its light made them feel at peace. No one knew the man inside had stayed up all night just to keep the flame alive. But perhaps that was what made it real. It was not just the light of oil, but the light of quiet perseverance. When spring arrived, the snow melted, the hill turned green again, and the town celebrated with a seasonal festival. Lanterns were strung across every street, bright, colorful, and loud. Yet among the hundreds of lights, some still remembered the lonely lamp on the hill. A light that did not seek attention, did not need an audience, yet never failed to shine. They gave it a gentle name, the Light of Peace. And Amos, one calm afternoon, sat by his window, sunlight brushing across his wrinkled hands. He no longer had the strength to travel far, but every night the lamp was still lit. Once, a breeze blew it out halfway through the night. He looked at the still glowing wick, smiled softly, and lit it again. The flame returned small but warm, reflected in his eyes, like a quiet promise that some things, when kept with sincerity, will never truly fade. And so, the night, like every night before, returned. Mist fell thin across the hill. The yellow lamp still shone at the top, guiding the traveler far from home, and also the one who kept it burning. The light was not great, but it was enough to chase away a patch of darkness. Enough to say that no matter how alone you feel, there is always something worth holding on to. In the vast stillness of the night, that little lamp kept breathing, slow, steady, and true, like a heart that never stops believing. The third story, the music room of silence. During the day, the city speaks loudly. Car horns, the click of glass doors, opening and closing, the clink of cups in cafes lit before dawn, people calling out to each other in a rush at crowded intersections. But at night, when the chill from the river slips into the narrow streets, all those sounds begin to fold up like birds returning to their nests. At the top floor of a red brick building on Maple Street, there is a small attic room with a slanted roof and a window facing north. The street light outside spills a soft yellow glow through the glass, making the dust in the air shimmer like rain. In that room, Nora, once a musician who played small stages in Maine, then Boston, and finally came back to a quiet town, sits beside an old piano. The ivory keys are worn and scratched by time, and the body of the piano smells like oak and autumn afternoons filled with angled sunlight. Nora no longer hears the way she used to. Her ears, after years of playing in cramped bars, have grown tired. It started with a soft ringing on quiet nights, then became layers of sound that overlapped like fog, until finally the clarity of music, which once beat like her own heart, slipped away like a little boat dissolving into mist. Her doctor called it the natural path of hearing after a lifetime in music. He advised her to rest, to use hearing aids if needed, and to learn to listen differently. That phrase stayed with her all winter, lingering like a note still resonating after the player's hands had left the keys. She never stopped playing. Only now, each night, she would pull the bench closer, so close her knees touched the wooden body of the piano. She would rest her palms on its surface before playing, as if greeting an old friend. She would tap a key gently, then listen, not just with her ears, but with her entire body, her shoulders, her chest, her abdomen, even her knees. The sound no longer reached her in a straight, familiar line. Instead, it came like a breeze brushing her skin, like a glass cup, vibrating under a light tap, like a low hum, crawling through her ribs and dissolving softly in her belly. Some nights, she would close her eyes without playing a single note, just placing her hands on the piano, counting the rhythm of the silence. Silence has its own pulse, slow, deep, and steady, like breath. Outside, the first snow began to fall. Early snowflakes are always slightly larger, drifting slowly, as if someone were weighing each step before touching down on the roof. Nora leaned her forehead against the cold window, watching the street light reveal the lazy orbits of falling snow, then turned back to the piano. She played a chord she used to call the light when she was 20, a simple major chord that had rescued her from many rough performances. This time, the sound did not strike her ears like a statement. Instead, It spread across her skin like warm water. She felt her chest loosen a little, as if the room had opened an extra window to let the breeze through. She thought about all the times she had stood in the dark corner of a stage left hand, strings damp with sweat, watching the crowd bow over their beers. And then, suddenly, one person would look up. Their eyes would meet the music like two strangers recognizing each other in a crowd. Back then, music was in the eyes. Now, music lived in her skin and breath. Nora began collecting the small sounds she used to overlook. The heater clicking on and off, warm water rushing through the pipes, a city bus stopping on the street below its door, hissing open, and then quietly closing. The neighbor downstairs laughing to himself while watching old basketball game replays. She wrote them down in a notebook, the way some people collect bits of colored thread fallen near a sewing machine. Each thread was a fragment of sound, not glamorous, not meant for the stage. But when stitched together, they formed a thin fabric, just warm enough for winter nights. One day, Rachel, an old friend from church choir, dropped by. She brought a half-finished knitted scarf and a box of waffle cookies. Nora made tea, cracked the window open a little to let the cold air in, and let them sit close. Rachel said she had just come out of a long, quiet breakup, the kind so thin you could not hold on to it, just a lingering tiredness with no name. Nora did not offer comforting words. Instead, she lifted the piano lid and told Rachel to rest her hand on the body of the piano, just like she did every night. They sat like that, saying nothing, just feeling a single chord ripple through the wood into their palms, then drift gently across their bodies like a soft, warm wave. When the sound had fully faded, Rachel pulled her hand back and said, "I think the quiet inside me just sang a little." They both smiled, and the scarf on her lap suddenly looked like a river, moving slowly through winter. News about Nora's quiet evening sessions. The musician who had learned to listen through her skin spread the way things do in small towns, through the bakery counter, the post office line, the mornings when people stopped for just a bit longer than 30 seconds to say hello. Occasionally, someone would knock on her door. An elderly woman brought a faded photo of her late husband. He had played saxophone in New Orleans and said she could no longer hear her favorite solos, but she wanted to see if music could still touch her hands. A 12-year-old boy forgot his gloves at basketball practice, his hands frozen, and asked to sit by the piano for a while. A watch repairman with thick glasses wondered if the vibration of the strings felt like the ticking hands of an antique clock. Nora, always opened her door. They did not come to hear a flawless performance. They came in search of a thin thread that might reconnect them to a gentle silence deep in their chest. The attic room began to develop its own rituals. People would take off their shoes at the carpet, touch the body of the piano, like saying hello, sit on the wooden chair by the window, and sip a small cup of hot tea to feel the rhythm on their tongue. Then Nora would play a slow series of chords like footsteps on fresh snow. No one clapped. When the music ended, those who needed to cry would cry. Those who needed to laugh would do so quietly. And most people simply exhaled, long and slow. They left behind little notes on the table. I heard my mother in the sound of this wood. I am no longer afraid of the surgery next week. Tonight, I will sleep. Nora did not keep these notes as trophies. She folded them carefully, placed them in a wooden box, and called it the Box of Silent Notes. Winter ripened with late storms, but inside, the room began to sound like spring was hovering somewhere nearby. Nora started a new practice for the first 5 minutes of each evening. She did not play a single note. She placed a small hourglass on top of the piano, letting the sand fall like a vertical stream, and invited everyone to close their eyes, place a hand over their chest, and listen to the simple rhythm of their own heartbeat. Some people could not bear it. They opened their eyes, looked out the window, shifted in their seats. But gradually, the silence became essential. In those quiet minutes, music stopped being something outside of them. It became a subtle movement inside something that needed no name. One evening, Nora stayed late by herself. The wind blew across the roof, making the room tremble like a boat tied close to shore. She suddenly remembered standing backstage years ago, the hot stage lights spilling onto her skin as she waited in the shadow for her cue. The mix of tension, anticipation, fear of mistakes, the yearning to be loved, it all had a scent she could never quite name. She smiled, placed both hands over her heart, and realized she no longer needed music to prove anything. She just wanted to be with it, like being with a friend who knows when to be quiet. She pulled the chair closer, bowed her head, touched a single soft chord, and let it go. The sound rose like a bird finding a warm current, needing no effort to fly. A few weeks later, a group of high school students came asking to film a project called community art. They brought just enough equipment and politely asked if anyone wanted to remain off camera. Nora agreed, under one condition: they could not film the silence. "The silent notes are music too," she said, "but they do not like the the lens. The kids nodded with full understanding. When the film was shown at the town hall on a Saturday afternoon, many were surprised. There were no grand performances from Nora, no crescendos, no applause, just close-up shots, a palm resting on the wood steam rising from a cup of tea, two pairs of eyes meeting and drifting apart, and snow falling, subtitled with the words, "No sound needed." The hall was completely still, as if the audience had just walked through a mist-covered forest without snapping a single twig. When the film ended, no one stood up right away. People lingered in their seats a little longer, like the habit in the attic room had quietly found its way into the hall. In early April, as the river cracked its ice and the wild ducks returned, Nora received a handwritten letter postmarked from another state. Inside were a few lines from a woman she had never met. "I saw the film about the silent music room. I can no longer hear my husband's voice on the old tape. The recorder is broken. Last night, I placed my hand on our wooden table and closed my eyes. I heard him." Nora folded the letter, placed it in the box of silent notes, and opened the window to let the spring breeze carry away some dust. The room smelled of damp soil, fresh sap, and the sound of children's bicycles riding down the street. Evenings continued like pages turning slowly in a book. Not every night brought visitors, and not everyone who came found what they were looking for. But the room was patient, and so was Nora. Once her ears rang so loudly she could hardly feel anything but a thick fog. She was about to close the piano lid when a young mother knocked, holding a baby who could not sleep and was afraid of the wind. Nora lit a candle and invited them in. She did not play the piano that night. She simply placed one hand on the wooden lid and the other on the baby's back very gently, so the child could feel the warmth of a rhythm outside the fear. The baby slept soundly, like someone who had crossed a narrow bridge and finally reached the other side. The mother eyes, glistening, whispered, "Thank you," while Nora felt the fog in her own ears begin to lift just a little. Summer arrived like a green ribbon tied across the town's forehead. By day, sunlight spilled across the doorsteps, and the scent of freshly cut grass lingered in the air. At night, the breeze brushed past the windows cool as water. The attic room now heard a new kind of music, laughter, drifting from porches, dishes clinking at late dinners, someone repeatedly practicing an old guitar riff. Nora kept the door slightly open, letting those sounds drift in now and then, like a neighbor pausing at the porch to say hello. She realized music did not need to be separated from life. It could live in the clink of a spoon in a bowl, or the soft thump of a cat landing on the wooden floor. She laughed for no reason at all, then played a short cluster of chords, her way of waving back to the neighborhood. One night in July, a distant storm knocked out power across the town. Lights went out. Elevators stopped, fans stilled, and phones in people's hands turned into tiny black mirrors. On the rooftops, the wind ran wild, like kids chasing each other. Nora lit a candle, placed it on the piano lid, and for the first time in many months, she played a full piece, from beginning to middle to end. No one listened, at least not in the usual sense, but the room listened. The wood listened, the night listened, and so did she. Unamplified, the tiny vibrations moved through her body like a summer rain on skin. When the piece ended, the city lights flickered back section by section. The street below sighed as if someone had just solved a very hard puzzle. Nora blew out the candle, but the light in the room did not disappear right away. It felt like another kind of light, gentle and steady, was now flowing softly through the corners. Autumn returned quietly. The leaves began to change from the edges. On the table, a black and white photo of Nora from her performing days sat next to the wooden box. She looked at it and saw a young woman with eyes full of eagerness and pride. She touched the frame and whispered, "Thank you for leading me here." Then she closed the box, poured herself a cup of tea, placed her hand on the body of the piano, and listened to the city breathing in and out in its own rhythm. The garbage truck passing on cobbled streets, someone's clock chiming 10, a gust of wind flipping a half-read book open on a chair. She understood now that her music no longer needed to be loud to be right, nor heard by many to be real. It only needed to be honest. And when it was honest, it always found its way into places where there had never been a door. That night, the rain fell like a curtain of fine beads, steady and unhurried. Nora wrote a line in her notebook before turning off the light. Silence does not ask us to run away. Silence invites us to stay. She set down her pen, glanced at the piano in the dim light, then climbed into bed. Her ears felt as calm as still water in a basin. She pulled the blanket up past her chest and noticed her heartbeat slow and round, like a warm pebble. Outside, the roof breathed with the rain, and down the street, someone who had just returned from a late shift stopped in front of their house, looking up at the attic window. No sound came from there, but the person smiled for no reason. Maybe because at night, sometimes just knowing there is a quiet room nearby is enough to ease the heart. The story closed like a musical note, fading naturally, without vanishing. The attic room remained, the old piano remained, and the hands that had come and gone left behind a small warmth on the wood. And Nora, in her own sleep, heard something she had been searching for a long time in the deep layers of silence. There is a song that needs no name, needs no performance, only someone brave enough to stay with it. When we lay our hand gently on life, life also trembles in the softest, truest way, like a piano that has waited all evening to whisper a single note, just loud enough to be heard. The fourth story, The Unsent Letter. The city after the rain smelled of warm metal from the railroad tracks and of dark earth just washed clean. In the Riverside neighborhood, the red brick steps were still slick maple leaves drifting toward the gutter like envelopes not yet sealed. In a small third-floor apartment next to the window overlooking the iron bridge, Maren adjusted her mother's old wooden desk to write. That desk had traveled with her family across 3 moves, from a rented house in Ohio to a small condominium in a Chicago suburb, and now here, a corner of the city, with the sound of night trains, like a slow heartbeat. On the desk, she neatly arranged a stack of creamy-colored paper, a fountain pen whose nib had been changed and polished from much use, and the small box of stamps she had collected over time in old bookstores. Everything was ready, like a quiet ritual carried on for many years. Maren had not sent a letter to anyone for a long time. She still wrote, she wrote often, but those letters lay in the second drawer on the left, the one whose handle felt a little loose and which made a creaking squeak each time it was opened. She adopted this habit in the winter when her father passed away, when words were the only way she could say the things she could not speak directly to anyone. Letters to her father, to an ex-loving partner, to her 16-year-old self, to a friend she no longer kept in touch with, to the neighbor who once left a basket of oranges at her door throughout the lockdown. She wrote things nobody asked to hear, and then she folded them, placed them in the drawer like one buries seeds in the ground, not expecting anything, only trusting that they needed a dark place to rest. Tonight, the scent of rain still lingered in the curtains. Maren sat down, began the first line on the new sheet. If I could, I would like to talk with you in a place without history. The deep blue ink soaked into the paper like a narrow path opening through the forest. She paused, listened to a distant train crossing the iron bridge. A faint vibration traveled through the window pane, touched her hand, resting on the desk, making her feel as if someone were tapping very softly to support her words. She continued writing, recounting the morning when she saw a man standing for a long time under the rain, holding a broken umbrella, not leaving, as though waiting for some kind of courage. She described how on her way back, a leaf stuck to her shoe heel, and she did not flick it off, letting it accompany her up 3 flights of stairs like a silent companion. She wrote that she did not understand why some things hold on to her so tightly for so many years, so many places. But when she put them on paper, they become soft like wet wool, still heavy, but no longer sharp. On the shelf, the old wall clock belonging to her mother struck 10. Maren thought of her mother, who never wrote letters, but kept all the postcards from friends in a tin box, each card with a crease at the corner, like a fingerprint. Her mother said writing letters was for people who had spare time, but she also said, when you need to say the hard thing, write it and place it under your pillow. And in the morning, you will find it lighter. Maren had done this many times, and indeed, the morning often felt kinder than the night. Even so, there are things that still remain, like a rusty key in the pocket of a coat, always bumping into your ribs each time you descend a stair. She wrote the sentence, "I forgive both of us." The pen paused. That sentence had appeared in many unsent letters, but today it did not lie as a ready-made phrase. It stood up like a person who has just decided to leave the desk and go breathe outside. She rested, the pen looked out the window. The iron bridge in the night resembled an unfinished musical phrase, not yet sure where it would lead. The river water, after the rain, was darker, yet reflected the lights, as though a sprinkling of salt lay on its surface. She suddenly understood what she wanted to do, no longer keep the words in the drawer, not to send to anyone. She did not know which address was still valid, but to bring them out into the open air, let them touch a space wider than the room. Like placing names on the water surface, then watching them dissolve, not gone, but merged. Maren gathered the old letters into a cloth bag, put on her coat, and descended the stairs. The hallway smelled of damp wood and soap from the apartment on the second floor. She stepped out into the street. The night had lessened its wetness, leaving only thin streaks of water on the asphalt like dried veins. At the corner of a late-night cafe, 2 people were having a quiet conversation, and the barista wiped the counter in time with a wordless song. She passed the glass door, saw her reflection against the backdrop of clean glasses, looking like a paper-cut silhouette. Across the street, the steps leading down to the riverbank still held a few drops of water. She stopped on the 3rd step, the step where sitting allows you just enough view over the railing to see a stretch of river, not hidden by the bridge. There the wind was gentler, and the sound of the city felt like a dream. She opened the cloth bag, pulled out the first letter, the yellowing one intended for her father, written in a winter of heavy snow. She did not read it. She simply held it in her hand for a while, to to remember the tremor of the pen at that time, like a little bird in the hand, then let it drop into the water. The envelope wet sank very slowly, as though someone held it one more second to ask, "Are you sure?" before releasing it. Next came the letter to the ex-partner, a string of unfinished sentences, many ellipses, and it drifted away before sinking, leaving a faint blur like a discreet smile of someone who knows that many things do not need an answer. The letter to her 16-year-old self was heavier, the paper thick, and the ink dense sank quickly, like a small stone falling into the palm. Each letter that left her hand made a different sound, not loud enough for anyone else to hear, but enough for her hand to know something had shifted. She paused at the last letter, the one she wrote this evening, still unsent, folded into 3, the folds soft and fresh. She read it twice, not to check the wording, but to breathe the rhythm of herself being printed on the paper. "If I could, I would like to talk with you in a place without history." She smiled at the impossibility of the sentence. History was still there, like the river, still held the taste of stone, the smell of moss, the sound of the bridge. But perhaps in this moment, while she stood in the night amid the scent of rain and the smell of paper, history could also sit down and rest, stop making noise. She folded the letter, took it from her hand. The train's soft rumble shook the bridge. A small light from the last car skimmed across the water, briefly revealing the outline of an envelope before shattering into salt-like specks of light. Marin closed her eyes and placed a hand on her chest. She felt her rib cage expand, as if someone had just cleared away an extra chair from the room inside her. She stood still for a long time, long enough for the scent of the river to feel familiar again, like the smell of home. Then sat down on the step, leaned against the railing, slipped both hands into her coat pockets, and let the night do the rest. When she returned, the stairway no longer smelled of soap. Perhaps the door of the second-floor apartment was shut now, quietly drying. She opened her own door, placed the empty cloth bag on a chair, took off her coat, hung it on the hook, and poured herself a glass of water. In the kitchen light, the droplets on her wrist sparkled like tiny letters yet to be named. She opened the second drawer on the left. This time, it felt lighter, and the creak softer, and looked at the thin space inside like a slice of brightness. She did not rush to fill that space. She left it there, like saving a seat for someone who might come later, or for herself on another night. The next morning, while the city was still half asleep, early, runners passed by the river. One person stopped, looked down, and saw a wet scrap of paper washed up at the water's edge. The writing almost completely blurred, leaving only curling lines of ink, like the roots of young plants. He picked it up, held it in his palm, and turned it toward the light. He could not read a thing, but suddenly felt the urge to call his mother. He slipped the paper into his pocket, thinking he might throw it away later, then changed his mind and tucked it into his inner coat pocket, the way people keep a pressed leaf as a bookmark. He did not know that last night someone had made space inside themselves so that a word no longer had to knock hard to be heard. The days passed. Maren kept writing. Not every night did she bring letters to the river. Some she kept not out of fear of losing them, but because she knew they needed another season to ripen. There were nights she did not write at all, just sat by the window, watching people walk in the rain, watching the neighbor's dog in its little yellow coat, watching a couple standing on the corner longer than usual before parting ways. She discovered that the most beautiful words came when she stopped trying to find them. Just like sparrows only land when you stop standing too close to the window. And each time she opened the drawer, the creak, now faint as a memory she knew her body had learned a new way to feel lighter, to say it, to write it down, and then let it go. Autumn withdrew. The iron bridge greeted thicker fogs, and the sound of night trains striking the bridge felt like a distant drumbeat. Maren visited her mother on the weekend. In the old kitchen, her mother poured tea, looked at her for a long moment, then said, "You are breathing easier these days." Maren did not mention the letters. There was no need. She simply smiled, took a sip of tea, and looked out at the backyard, where a wooden chair that had once lost a leg had been mended, not as sturdy as new, but steady enough to sit, drink tea, and listen to the wind flick a little string on the fence with a soft clink. She suddenly understood that forgiveness was not a sentence, a hug, or a letter sent. It was the ability to sit on a chair that once broke, no longer afraid it will collapse again, because you now know where to place your weight. Back in the city, she walked past the old bookstore on the corner. On the postcard rack was a card showing a clumsily folded paper boat floating on dark water. The shopkeeper, an old man fond of telling stories about rare stamps, said the card had just arrived. Maren bought one, stood at the counter, and wrote a few lines. Then, for the first time in a very long time, placed a stamp on it and filled in the address. To myself, on the 3rd floor, the apartment overlooking the bridge. The old man smiled when he accepted the card, joking that not many people send letters to themselves. She replied that sometimes, in order to truly hear something, you have to let it travel a long way, then return in someone else's hand. He nodded, like someone well acquainted with the journey of words. When the postcard arrived, the buzzer in the lobby rang with a tone a little longer than usual, as if it knew it carried something light yet important. Maren tore open the envelope and took out the image of the paper boat. Her own handwriting returned the ink dry, but alive in her eyes. If I could, I would like to talk with you in a place without history. We cannot. But we can sit here tonight between the sound of trains and the scent of rain, and call each other's name with a voice that does not demand an answer. She placed the postcard on the table next to the box of stamps, next to the fountain pen. She did not put it in the drawer. She stood it upright beside the dried flowers on the windowsill, so that each evening, when the city lights up, it glows along with everything else. Night fell once more. The wind from the river crept up again, cool and clean. Maren drew the curtain halfway, letting in a stripe of the city. She opened her notebook, not to write a letter, but just to jot down 3 short lines for the day. 4 hours later, the desk lamp was still warm. Outside, the iron bridge patiently held the footsteps of late-night travelers. Somewhere beneath the riverbank, perhaps a scrap of paper remained slowly disintegrating, the ink dissolving like salt merging with the water. And in the 3rd-floor apartment, someone slept soundly. Not because everything was finished, but because everything unfinished finally had a place to rest. No postal stamp, no area code, no clear recipient. Yet some words still find their way home. On the right night, to the right person, at the right time. The story, number 5. The Lighthouse Keeper at Seabrook Bay. The night sea carried the scent of salt mixed with seaweed, as if someone had stirred an old memory into the wind. Along the rocky shore of Seabrook Bay, the waves struck the granite face and broke into white foam, glinting under the rotating beam on top of the lighthouse. The lighthouse stood on a mid-rock promontory, its mortar walls darkened by age, the spiral stairs showing wear from thousands of footsteps up and down across a century. In the round glass room at the top, a quiet light slowly swept out toward the horizon, then back and then out again, neither fast nor slow, like the breathing of someone who has learnt to listen to the wind. The keeper's name was Elias. He lived alone in the little house at the foot of the tower. Steep roof, red-painted door-wooden porch overlooking the sea, speckled with starlight. In the morning, he poured black coffee from a slightly chipped enamel pot. In the afternoon, he repaired the section of railing corroded by salt. In the evening, he climbed the stairs to the top, cleaned the glass, checked the reserve oil, listened to the lamp's vibration like a gentle insect. On his desk sat a hard-cover notebook, recording date, wind visibility, tide, and sometimes a private note, like ship's horn longer than usual, or pod of dolphins swam east at 5:40 p.m. The way he wrote those lines was like someone who keeps house and logs, familiar footsteps on the floor, not out of necessity, but out of affection. Elias had been at sea for many years. Big sky, big wave storms by night. He knew the feeling of leaning his back against the damp deck, hands clutching the iron rail, while the wind tore the captain's curses away. He knew the smell of wet rope when rain had just struck. He knew the look in a sailor's eyes when he searched for a point of light on shore, a small promise, enough that they would not panic when the southern direction vanished into a thick wall of mist. When he left the ship, people said he was tired. He laughed, saying, "I am just switching to minding the light for those who go on." Everyone thought that was a pretty phrase, but as seasons passed, people realized he meant it. Some people are born to go, and some are born to stand still and shine. One autumn afternoon, the sky dropped low, so the window frame seemed to open into a soft weight gray. The tide pulled back far, revealing rock steps smooth as a sleeping whale's back. Elias inspected the backup automatic system, opened the oil cabinet, set the clock according to habit. Below on the lawn, 2 children of the neighboring fishermen ran and chased each other. Their laughter struck the wind and shattered into pieces, but still bright. He came out to the porch, waved at them, reminded do not run too close to the edge of the rocks, then turned back. His hand paused on the door handle for a second, a new habit in recent years, like a silent greeting to the light he was about to tend. He realized that in this life there are doors that open into spaces not for going through to somewhere, but for staying a little longer. That night, a storm offshore changed course early. The forecast said the front would hit the shore at 11 o'clock, but by 9, the rain wall was already battering the glass like thousands of fingers. The ship's horn in the distance grew hoarse, dragging out a cry of distress. Elias turned the lamp faster for one sweep, then returned it to its regular rhythm. He remembered his father's words when someone out there panics. You must not panic too. Keep the beat for them. He wrapped a scarf around his neck, opened the door, stepped onto the narrow balcony encircling the lantern room. The wind lashed in the salt sting straight into his face. His raincoat fluttered like a sail, caught too full. He wiped the glass with a dry cloth he had prepared in advance, making slow circles so the light would not be smeared. Then, a bolt of lightning cut across the sky, so white that even the masonry ridges on the wall cast their own shadow. Among the thunder, he heard another sound, a small engine, irregular, like a tired heart. He leaned out, placed his hand on the railing, peered into the salty black. There, it was a dot moving in a zigzag, appearing and disappearing. "Do not try to make for shore, straight on," he said to the empty space, as though his words could enter the ship's radio. He knew that right under that rocky edge was a reef, angled toward the south like an overturned giant comb. The vessel, perhaps a small wooden ship, was unintentionally steering itself onto that serrated bed. He went indoors, lifted the old telescope, cleaned the eyepiece, lifted it to his eye. On the deck across, a man stood by the bow, heavy raincoat, face down. The helmsman staggered, surely looking for another light. Elias understood that feeling. When everything collapses around you, you tend to look too close into the drop of water on your hand and forget to look up and see what the rotating beam is saying. He went to the engine room, changed the frequency of the shore signal horn to a lower, longer tone, then switched on the auxiliary light on the terrace below, angled, pointing the way off to the right. Nothing guaranteed the people on the ship would see it, but he still did it carefully, like writing a letter to a harbor with no address. Waves flung white foam past the railing. His eyes stung. His hands were cold. He remembered the first time he steamed through a night like this. He was 23. Then, with a hot heart, thinking every wave was his personal trial. Now he knew the waves did not care so much about him. The waves had their own job, and he had his job, the job of the light. The engine's tone changed nearer. The point of light on the water swerved like someone who suddenly remembered the way after walking 2 wrong turns. Elias let the beam return to its correct cycle, sweeping cleanly across the rain screen from north to west. Minutes later, a long exhalation, ripped by the wind in many pieces. But he heard it. The breath of someone who had made it through had turned away from the jagged rocks. The vessel drifted away. He stood still a little longer, letting the light do its work, as if nothing had happened. The night retreated 1 step, not much, just enough for him to see the blurry outline of the horizon once more. After the storm, morning arrived, like a friend dropping by early, carrying a basket of pastries and not rubbing its eyes. The sea surface was smooth as dark glass, the foam trails still lingering in the rock crevices, like handwriting, not yet dry. Elias walked down, opened the door, took a deep, long breath. The smell of wet wood inside his house, blending with the aroma of coffee grounds and the fibers of damp cloths drying. He set the kettle on the stove, heard the crackle of water heating, then sat on the porch. Below on the road, the little truck of the boat repair yard rolled slowly. A man raised his hand to wave. The two children from next door. Last night, they must have slept through the wind's roar, ran out their rubber boots, tapping the uneven porch steps. A seagull, perched on a wooden post, tilted its head, looked at its reflection in a puddle, very busy, checking its appearance. He smiled. The world after the roars still returned to its small chores. At midday, a young man with wet hair, a blue windbreaker, knocked at the gate. He carried a dark, knitted cap soaked through his eyes, red from lack of sleep. Last night, I was thinking, if we did not see the light. He trailed off and smiled awkwardly, extended his hand, his arm still trembling slightly. My name is Noah. Thank you. Elias did not accept thanks like someone receiving a medal. He nodded, invited him onto the porch, poured him a cup of coffee, pushed out the plate of leftover cookies from last week. They sat a while, not speaking, listening to the wind flowing past the edge of the roof. Noah told how his boat carried light wooden crates around the bay to avoid the heavy seas. The engine suddenly faltered. In the rain's voice, he had thought of the phone calls he had not made of his mother, of an old photo in his wallet. The beam felt like someone telling us, turn right. Elias smiled very softly. The light only rotates. The turning is your work. He was quiet a bit, then nodded, as someone understanding that some things must be remembered by the skin, not by paper. Time passed. The lighthouse did its job, like an old teacher, reading the same lesson to many generations, each time reading a little differently. In winter, the light went through thick mist like silk-tinged amber. In summer, it bounced on the water like a taut strand of light. In spring, it swam through drizzles scented with opening leaves. In autumn, it touched migrating flocks of birds, like a wish for a safe journey. Elias wrote less, but his hand still knew the path to the switch, to the oil cabinet, to the cloth for cleaning the glass. He was slower. The steps felt higher, but he did not measure his old age by the number of stairs climbed. He measured it by his ability to stand still longer, to watch a beam of light complete its turn without hurry, accepting that the next turn would come in its own time without needing him to call it. One day, he received a small package, a bright wooden frame inside an old photograph of the lighthouse taken from the sea direction, the sun setting behind it. The lamp's beam, a thin streak, like a needle piercing purple cloth. On the back of the photo, handwritten, "That night, we followed this streak home." No name, no return address. He placed the photo on a shelf, leaning against the wall between a model wooden boat and a broken compass that had long ceased to point north. He thought, fortunately, there are thank yous that find no one to return them to because they have already been repaid by someone lighting their own lamp in a kitchen, in an ambulance, at a mail desk, or simply in a room where someone is learning to whisper to the evening. The next spring, the town decided to replace some of the lighthouse's old parts with a new control system. A technical crew came machines, laptops, cables, markers, laminated instruction boards. They were courteous, skillful, worked carefully. Elias stood beside, learning the new buttons, as though learning a grammar needed to continue his silence correctly. On the first evening, the new system ran the light brighter, its rotation even like drawn by compass. He stood in the lantern room, listened to the machinery, so quiet he almost heard nothing. Suddenly, he felt a sense of loss. Then he laughed at his own stubbornness. He had even loved the quirks of the old lamp. He opened the door, stepped onto the balcony, let the wind slip a little cold into his collar, and thought whether the machine hums or rattles, the important thing is that the light still turns. There was a night very quiet, so quiet the sound of the water was like a breath brushing the rocks. Elias sat on the wooden step before the porch, holding a cup of tea, his gaze on the path of light on the water whenever the lamp swept around. He remembered his late wife, who once said, "When you come ashore, do not switch off the part of the sea inside you. Let it stay in the lamp." He realized maybe that is why, through all these years, he never felt alone here in the frightening sense of that word. Alone, yes, but alone within a larger rhythm, like a low note that needs empty space to resonate. He set down his cup, braced his hand, stood up, his hand brushing the wooden porch post. The wood, cool, smooth, straight. He closed the door, climbed the spiral stairs. His hand touched the cold metal rail. Each step, step by step, like someone tapping the beat of a song that never ends. Weeks later, Noah returned this time with his father. They brought a basket of cleaned fish, a still warm apple pie, and bright eyes of people who had just placed a thank you in the right spot. They ate lunch on the porch, told stories of their detour at sea, of the wind shifting of times when they had to anchor, despite the schedule written differently. Noah's father spoke slowly, his voice thick like wood. He said, when he was young, he used to think responsibility was to stand in the midst of the storm without bowing. Later, he understood responsibility often means knowing when to bow so you can slip under a gust, keeping the boat from breaking. Elias nodded, smiling with his eyes. The lamp is like that too. It does not argue with the night. It just repeats the way every turn. They were quiet for a while, letting the wind say the rest. When the sun dipped to the west, the sea grew heavier, with a layer of bronze light. Flocks of seagulls flew low. Elias stood on the small lawn between the house and the tower, watching his shadow stretch on the mortar wall. He raised his hand, tried to shape his fingers into an invisible frame like children do when taking pictures with their eyes. In that frame, he saw part of the lamp, part of the sky, and part of himself, a man standing between two rhythms, the rhythm of the lamp's turning and the rhythm of the waves. He lowered his hand, heard a bicycle roll past on the dirt road, heard someone calling the dog home to eat, heard a nearby window shut from the night wind. All those sounds joined into a thread, thin and strong, stretching from the step where he stood to the horizon road. He knew the night was coming again, and he knew, as many nights before, the lamp would turn. When the first flash of the beam touched the water, you who are hearing this story can imagine a thin line of light drawn across your mind, clearing out a small path through the thick busyness of the day. No one demands you be a lighthouse, and no one forbids you from being a boat. But somewhere in your chest, perhaps you also have a little glass room where a beam of light turns steadily, quietly, not showing off, just reminding the way is here. When you are tired, you may turn right. When you are fearful, you may anchor a while. When you are ready, you may go on. That beam does not ask you to look at it. It only needs to be lit. And the act of lighting it every evening, every cycle, every breath, has already been a way of returning. Story 6. The quilt sewn from forgotten dreams. The town at the end of the valley had a small street called Willow, where the autumn wind passed by, like someone gently pushing back their hair. At the corner of the street stood an old tailoring shop with a faded wooden sign, thimble and thread, small needle and thread. The shop window was always spotless, and inside hung the scent of fabric freshly washed and dried in the sun, mingled with the smell of wood from a long wooden ruler. On the walls, spools of thread were stacked in tall columns, brick red, sage, green, butter yellow, lavender, like a choir standing quietly. The owner of the shop was Mrs. Eloise, her hair silver, her hands thin but firm, and her eyes gentle as a late afternoon. Each morning she brewed a pot of tea, opened the door slightly earlier than the hours listed, and pulled a wooden chair to sit by the window to sew. The chair bore a worn indentation in the armrest where it had been smoothed by thousands of touches, like a small river wearing its own channel. Many years ago, her husband had been the town's carpenter. He passed away quietly in a mild winter, leaving her a polished oak box with a lid carved with wild roses. Inside it were not woodworking tools, but scraps of fabric he had collected from each repair job, a piece of an old man's dress shirt collar at a house cleaning, a swatch of lace from a Riverside Homes curtain, a corner of a cotton quilt chewed by mice at a hilltop farm, a fragment of a blue floral dress from the girl who moved to the city. He stored every piece of cloth there, as though storing the size of each passing day. After the funeral, Eloise opened the box, her fingers unconsciously brushing each thread, as if touching stories he never told her. She carried the box back to the shop, placed it on the highest shelf, and made a promise to herself that one day she would piece together those remnants into something warm enough to carry someone through a new winter. Day after day, customers came asking her to fix stuck zippers, shorten pant hems, replace shirt buttons. Eloise did each task carefully. But every afternoon, when sunlight slanted through the glass, she retrieved the oak box, opened its lid, chose one scrap, just one, laid it on the table, ready to cut, and thought about its place in a quilt that still had no form. She did not rush. She believed the scraps would find their way to each other if she gave them enough time to look around. Winter came early that year. Frost clung to the window edges in little flowers no one had planted. On the first night, it snowed. Eloise was late returning home. She walked past the church and saw the caretaker posting a notice about a shelter for orphaned children, opening sooner than planned because the cold had arrived suddenly. The wind made the paper tremble like lips trying to hold warmth. She stood there a moment, her fingers numb, then hurried home. That evening, she brewed ginger tea, laid out the fabric scraps as if sorting through the seasons gone by, and knew the quilt must be finished before Christmas. Not just one quilt, perhaps many, but first one large enough to cover 3 small beds. The next morning, she rolled up the shutter early, turned on the golden lamp, and cleaned her work table. She placed the long wooden ruler over the fabric base, cream cotton, soft as breath. The first scraps went on the frame a corner, from the shirt, a faint soap scent, a strip of lace with a tear as slender as a sigh, a square of denim, worn yet resilient, a small triangle speckled with white stars from the little girl's dress who once stood on a chair watching her cut fabric. The needle ran the thread, followed, tied a knot on the wrong side, as if securing a quiet whisper to keep it from slipping away. As the needle moved, Eloise heard the soft sounds of the world, a snow plow scraping down the hill. Before town, the doorbells jingle. Each time someone pushed in and released their hand, the water in the kettle hissing just before it steamed, her granddaughter's pencil tapping a rhythm on the study desk at home. Among these sounds, she felt the ache of longing lose its sharpness. It turned soft, like a faded piece of cloth that you still like because it fits just right. She did not chase it away. She sewed it in too, like stitching a patch of overcast sky into the quilt so the sunny days would not glare too brightly. The door opens. The bell rings. A little boy walks in his nose, red from the cold. He clutches a few sweaters in need of mending and a worn knit cap. "Ma'am, would you save some small leftover fabric pieces for me?" At the shelter, they said we could make Christmas decorations if we had some fabric. He speaks quickly, avoiding looking at the blanket on the table. Eloise nods, smiles, gathers a handful of colorful fabric scraps into a paper bag, then asks his name. "I am Theo." He stands still for a few seconds, then curiously leans in to examine the shapes of the fabric. "What is this, ma'am?" "It is a blanket, but it also can be a long story." Eloise hands Theo a bit of worn denim fabric. "Do you like this color?" Theo nods, holding the piece as though he were holding a ticket. Before he runs out, he turns back and asks, "Could you sew a star into the blanket?" "Of course, because I think the star helps people not be afraid of the dark." Eloise laughs, and suddenly a small square of light shines in her chest. "Thank you for reminding me." That afternoon, she takes from a wooden box a patch of blue from the dress of the girl who once left the town. On the fabric is a faded, star-shaped streak, perhaps from the sun shining on one spot for years. She cuts out the star along that faded streak, not bothering to make it perfectly symmetrical, then places it on the east corner of the blanket, layered over a thin lace strip, like a cloud. She sews each stitch small, and even like a walker's steps across an ice-covered bridge. When the stitching is done, she glances up and sees heavier snow falling outside the laughter of children, beneath the porch across the street, sounding like marbles rolling on wood. The next day, a man brings his late wife's wool coat, asking for it to be altered so his youngest daughter can wear it. He speaks softly, as if afraid to break something inside his throat. Eloise nods, measures marks with tailor's chalk, and when he leaves, she asks permission to keep the leftover fabric. The man is surprised for a moment, then nods. That evening, she cuts the leftover fabric into delicate curves, like gusts of wind, combines them with the denim piece from the day before into the shape of a winding road through the star. For someone to reach the light, she thinks, then she sews. The needle goes, the thread follows the reverse side, smooth as a palm turned down. Word spreads about the blanket with the star and the road. An elder woman brings a handkerchief her mother-in-law gave at her wedding, saying she wants to contribute a portion. A preschool teacher brings a worn sweater of her class, asking to take a strip of collar knitting so the blanket won't be too stiff. The children will like the soft part. A teenage boy drags in an old sports jersey, cuts out the number 7, frayed in one corner, and says, "Sew this somewhere, a little hidden, so luck is tucked inside the blanket." Eloise does not turn away a single scrap. She washes each piece, dries irons, touches it, listening to what each scrap says, sensing whom it wants to stand beside. Before long, the blanket holds stories stacked on stories, a small promise beside a long afternoon, a farewell beside a laugh, a ragged part beside a smooth one. None conceals another. Each is seen in its own light. The night before Christmas, a snowstorm sweeps through, and the town drifts beneath a deep white that covers every roof like a giant blanket. Eloise stays late at the shop, the yellow light casting her shadow onto the glass door like a soft pencil stroke. She flips the blanket over, sews the final stitches to hem the edge, then lifts the whole piece onto her lap to smooth the folds. It is heavy, but the heaviness is that of something with a heartbeat. She hears the snowblower slow outside the door, then the engine cuts off. A knock comes gently. It is the supervisor of the shelter. He stands shivering, his cheeks, red eyes shining like snow on eyelashes. Eloise opens the door. Gusts of wind rush in, carrying the scent of a clean night. He looks at the blanket for a long moment, and then raises his head. "Ma'am, did you finish in time?" Eloise nods. "Yes, but I believe one square is still missing." She turns, takes from the oak box the final scrap, a flannel shirt of her husband's, the faded blend like a river on a map. She cuts a small piece, not square, not round places, it in the lower corner, then sews slowly. When the final stitch passes through, she ties a small knot, as though tying a whispered promise. She lays her hand over it, closes her eyes, utters a silent phrase. Here you are. On the day the blanket is gifted, the sky is a thin sheet of light, the sun melting on the snow like syrup. In the shelter, the children sit around a long table, faces dropped between knit caps and scarves, their eyes brighter than the old chandeliers. Eloise and the supervisor spread the first blanket over the small bed next to the window. Everyone stops talking for a short, perfect moment. Not because the blanket is beautiful, though it is beautiful in an unplanned way, but because it feels like a field that has passed through 4 seasons and been stitched together, spread out once more. Theo runs over his hand, touching the crooked star. It is here, he says. He looks around, finds Eloise's eyes, then smiles, as though he has recognized something he once hoped for and found it in place. That night, the children sleep. The snow continues falling outside, but inside the room, there are steady breaths and the very soft sound of the blanket rustling each time someone shifts. The crooked star lies still in its corner. The road curves through the number 7, hidden in the denim patch, the soft collar strip beneath the cheek of one child. Eloise stands in the doorway, for a while not stepping in, like a painter standing before a finished canvas who knows no further. Brush stroke is needed. She closes the door, hears the wind diminish as if tired. On her way home, she passes the church, the bells ringing 4 even tones, neither high nor low, sounding like a secure shoulder. After Christmas, the 2nd blanket begins, then the 3rd. People keep bringing those fabric scraps that speak what is hard to say. A strip of a wedding gown cut from the hem, a piece of a school jacket with the embroidered name, shredded a sliver of a curtain from a room, now an office. Each scrap breathes. Eloise stitches them in a way that does not hide. If a piece has an old tear, she makes loose stitches, so the tear remains visible, not to remind of pain, but to say we still walk together, even in places once thin. Spring arrives slowly. One day, the rain falls longer than expected, the drops soft, as if someone had taught them how to land. The shop door opens. Eloise lays the 3rd blanket on the table to hem. The bell tinkles. A young woman enters, her eyes roaming like she is retrieving something forgotten long ago. She whispers, "When I was little, I used to stand at the window, watching you sew." Eloise smiles. The young woman presents a bundle of fabric. "This is my father's shirt. He died last year. I I want to contribute a patch. Eloise accepts, opens the bundle, meets the scent of familiar detergent, the seam at the elbow undone after a long day. She cuts a small piece from the area where sweat once soaked in, where the shirt held a full day, and sews it near the center. She does not say why she chose that spot. The young woman watches her eyes, wet nods, as if she heard an old answer. On a soft, light afternoon, thin like a sheet of paper, Eloise pulls the oak box down, again, sets it on the table, opens the lid, sees the bottom of the box reveal its bright wood grain. She places her hand on the box's floor, the coolness of the wood entering her palm, and suddenly feels calm, as though sitting beside an old friend under the porch. She is not sad. The box is lighter. The box has done what boxes must hold, pass on, and become light. She closes the lid, sets it back on the shelf, not as high as before, but at eye level, so she might glance and smile sometimes. At night, the town lies down like a bolt of fabric, tucked neatly into a drawer. At the shelter, a child dreams she is walking on a softly winding road, beneath a sky with the crooked star not perfect by picture book standards, but shining in exactly the right place. In the apartment upstairs, the man turns on his kitchen light, sews back a button that Eloise gave along smiles to himself at the little skill that kept a day from unraveling. On Willow Street, the shop lights are off, but the half-stitched blanket on the table still holds the warmth of a hand and needle. The night wind slips through the door crack, takes nothing, leaves behind only the scent of soft wood. And Eloise, in the chair by the window, dozes for a moment between two showers, her head tilting gently, her hand still on the edge of the blanket, like someone guarding a quiet flame. She does not wait for anyone to say thank you. She also does not count how many stitches she made. She only knows that every scrap, when placed in the right spot, no matter how small, makes the blanket a little bit warmer. And perhaps in each person's life, there are always such pieces waiting to be seen, forgotten, dreams, a word unsaid, a long day, needing somewhere to lie down. When someone sits down, slowly, listens, stitches them, with even stitches, all of them cease to be sharp, become soft, and find their way to embrace one another. At the crossing of those stitches, the night suddenly becomes less deep. At that crossing, people hold hands more easily, even when only holding fabric. At that crossing, someone gone and someone still here can meet in silence under a crooked star, and both are warm. The seventh story. The window framing the evening light, the wooden house sits halfway up a west-facing hillside above the town, where a white gravel road curves gently and vanishes behind a row of birch trees. Every afternoon, the sun slows its pace as it crosses the large attic window of the room, pouring into it a band of gold like thin honey. From that window, one can see the valley spreading below the tin roofs of several old barns, glinting the railway track, winding through the dry grass field like a dark thread. The room smells of oil paint, pine wood, and a bit of plaster. On the floor lie droplets of dried paint that have become small stars. The homeowner is an artist named Lynn, in her 40s, her hair tied high with a cloth ribbon, her hands always marked by color, even on days she does not touch a brush. When she still lived in the city, Lynn painted according to exhibition schedules, according to seasonal sales, according to gallery opening hours. The paintings were completed on time tension in their frames, the lines like sentences practiced to express the idea precisely. Then, one day, after a cancellation call, after a contract that did not come back, after a morning standing before a blank canvas where all the greens were too bright, she packed her things, left the city. This hillside house found her by the scent of the wood. It looked as if it once belonged to someone who knew how to love the hours of silence. Lynn opened the door, ran her hand over the frame, exhaled, and decided to stay. On the first day, she set up an easel right in front of the window. A large canvas, white heavy. She mixed a thin palette and sat down. But instead of starting, she simply looked. From the window, you could see a small trail where a red fox sometimes passed at the end of the day, its tail blazing like a pink exclamation point. Further away, there was an old maple tree, its branch reaching westward, the upper leaves always turning yellow first. The wind passed through, making the edge grasses sway like the sleeve of someone in a hurry, and the sparrow flock on cold days sat huddled on the power line, silent as a musical rest. Lynn sat until the gold on the wall faded to gray. Then she touched a very thin stroke on the canvas and stopped. From that day on, she gave herself a ritual. Each early morning, she added one stroke each afternoon. She added another stroke, no more. Each stroke had to be a clear breath, neither a compensation for yesterday nor an insurance for tomorrow. She called it the window rhythm. In the morning, the line was usually cool and straight like dew. In the afternoon, the color would be warm and soft, like the wooden tabletop just wiped with a damp cloth. Over several weeks, the painting hardly changed for anyone glancing quickly, but for Lynn, each stroke carried the weight of its own story. A cloud moving slower than another. A delayed train whistle. a shirt hanging to dry from the house below, falling into the grass, then picked up, still damp. Friends far away messaged, asking, "When will the painting be finished?" Lynn replied, "I do not know." They sent her photos of opening nights, frames, full of people, glasses of wine, held half-lived laughter in close proximity. She looked, smiled, closed. The phone turned back to the window. Here wine was the late afternoon sunlight in a glass of water. Laughter was the sparrow flock suddenly exploding from the bamboo thicket because a dry leaf fell too fast, and the crowd was the clouds gathering in a corner of the sky no one knew in advance. One afternoon, the rain lasted so long, the valley became a sheet of glossy black fabric. Lynn put down her brush, just watched the thin trails sliding down the glass, like someone drawing a silent river with an invisible pen. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. The neighbor below, an old woman named May, carrying a basket of plums, stood wet on the porch, her eyes crinkling like nutshells. Lynn invited her in, boiled water, found a clean towel. May looked at the unfinished painting, nodded. "You are raising something that must grow slowly." Lynn asked how she knew. May said she once planted an apple tree on the patch of ground behind her house. Every day she did not pull it up to see how the roots were growing. She just watered it, weeded around it, and stood beneath its shade when the sun was harsh. Then, one season, it gave one fruit so good that I thought the entire year before was preparing for that moment. May smiled, said plums are sour, but good for pies. Lynn washed her hands, took the dough, preheated the oven, and the room smelled of dough and plums through the evening. In autumn, the colors on the palette became thicker. Lynn added to the painting a very small road from the window edge running down the grass slope, just a few strokes, like a whisper. She meant to paint footsteps, then stopped. Something that afternoon, maybe the train passed earlier, reminded her that sometimes the most beautiful footprints are the ones not seen. She added a thin white streak beside the clouds so the afternoon sounded softer. She stepped back, saw the painting breathe, neither deep nor shallow, just enough. One morning, dawn was slow beyond measure, as if it were busy somewhere far away, and arrived late. Lynn made tea, leaned on the window frame, listened to the wind pulling the cloud threads like pulling yarn across a loom. There was music in some house down in the valley, faint and joyful, the melody unclear. She put down her cup, added a very small dot in the viewing space, a distant house with a thin wisp of smoke. That dot almost no one saw, but when it was placed, she felt the whole painting shift, its center of gravity settle, as if the room had one more person sitting quietly reading a book. Early winter snow came unannounced. In a few hours, everything changed color. The gravel road became a bright vein. The grassy edge turned into foam ribbons. The wooden fence wore a white blanket. Lynn put on a thick wool sweater. Fuzzy slippers stood for a long time in front of the window. She recalled an exhibition many years ago when the lights were poured too generously. Every painting looked like it was trying to shout. Here the snow spoke quietly, in a voice that only the floor and footsteps heard clearly. She grabbed a palette knife, dragged a long horizontal line across the painting, opening the sky into a narrow slit, like an envelope not yet sealed. The painting suddenly gained a new rhythm, the rhythm of waiting. Also, that winter, the newspaper boy pedaled up the hill. Late, his tire slipped. Once, then he rose, smiling, knocked on the window for a glass of water. He looked at the painting, asked when it would be finished. Lynn placed the glass in his hand, said, "Maybe there will be no finished day in the way everyone thinks." He pressed, his lips nodded, as if understanding the hardest lesson of the day. Before leaving, he pulled a red button he found on the road out of his pocket, placed it on the windowsill, said red next to white, "We'll be happy." Lynn smiled, stuck the button into the corner of the wooden frame, a small marker of a winter with a visiting friend. On New Year's Day, the town set off fireworks early. From the window, Lynn saw the sky glimmer as if someone sprinkled sugar on a dark cake. She did not paint the fireworks. She painted the afterglow, a thin, purple line lingering on the edge of the clouds, a small vibration on the tin roof of the barn, a light shadow of the street lamp, lengthening for a moment. When the fireworks ended, the painting still held a bit of the afterwards on its surface, like a sentence left behind longer than the speaker. Spring arrives with the smell of damp earth and the sound of water running under the grass. On the valley's edge, little spots of green emerge like the opening lines of a long letter. Lynn places a wooden chair by the window, replacing the habit of standing with the habit of sitting. Sitting lowers her view. Just a little, the world enters the frame through the low path, and she notices things she has never seen before. A small stone peeking from the edge of the snow, a blade of grass bending over the mouth of the well, an ant carrying a seed shell off course, and then turning back. She adds a very light brown stroke along the path, as though signing an indistinct name. And the painting, in a very secluded spot, brightens by half a tone. One day, the wind rises strongly. The window shakes, as if someone's hand has placed itself on a chest. Lynn lightly ties the window frame, pulls the curtain to prevent the color from drying too fast, then sits down, holding a sheet of white paper. She writes a few lines about the last few months, about how she is less afraid of not succeeding, about the strange joy of seeing a color turn just right after waiting many days, about the red button and the basket of sour plums, about the distant house with thin smoke, and the red fox running by just when the afternoon tilts. She folds the paper and places it beneath the easel, like a small stone holding a corner of the cloth down so it will not fly away. Summer arrives with the scent of freshly cut grass and the sound of slender bicycle tires. The long midday hours, the light making dust motes drift in the room like fish swimming slowly. The children break from school, sometimes running past the window, pausing to look in, waving, then disappearing like quick hellos. Lynn opens the window wider, letting sound enter. Without permission, the water spraying from the garden hose. The woodpecker's steady tap on the trunk of a tree, someone calling a name from afar. She does not try to record them all. She selects just one sound of the day to affix to her canvas. Today it is the voice Avery calling from the foot of the slope. Tomorrow it will be the click of the garden gate locking. Another day it will be the lid of the jam jar popping open. Those sounds, when they become color, are no longer audible. Yet the painting has a living surface, like human skin under sunshine. In July, the town lost power one evening. Every window turned black. Only the moonwash silvered the roof. Lynn lights a candle and places it on the windowsill. But she does not paint. She sits facing the painting, quiet. In the candle light, the layers deepen. The scraped marks appear like fingerprints. She realizes that the sad days also had their place. A layer of green, overreached, now becomes the base for a gentle yellow. A mistake in the bottom right turns into a soft ridge supporting a streak of white. A patch of paint drying at the edge becomes the curb of the faint road. She understands that the painting has accepted everything, not cleaning it up, just placing it where it belongs. And perhaps because of that, when people look, they feel at peace. Toward the end of summer, May brings up a basket of early apples. The two sit peeling apples, the peels curling, long, fragrant, the talk, not quite talk. May asks where the painting will be hung when completed. Lynn laughs and says maybe she will not hang it, at least not leave the window frame. Here, it still sees the place that nurtured its growth. May nods understanding, like one understands that the apple tree should not be uprooted just because it has borne fruit. Do not hang it. Yet, she says, let it stay here for one more season of wind. Autumn returns with the first sound of a dry leaf on the doorstep. Lynn changes her palette, mixes new yellows. She adds a thin streak to the trunk of the old maple tree, not to make it sharper, but so someone might touch it in the year. One evening, the newspaper boy returns taller, now handing Lynn an old magazine with an article about the painters of the town. He points to a line. Some say the painting is not finished because life is not finished. He asks what she thinks. Lynn says maybe true, but maybe the painting wants to remain longer with the afternoon light. The boy smiles and says if it were him, he would stay too. One night, a heavy rain makes the glass wall breathe. Lynn sees a figure run through the path sheltering under the maple tree. She goes down to open the door. It is a man, hiking heavy coat, wet hat, eyes, lost in the rain, and tired. Lynn invites him in brews. Tea, places the dry cloth over the stove. The man sits quiet, like an old chair, finding steady floor. He looks at the painting, long, then speaks, voice like timber soaked by dew. I have traveled many beautiful places, but this, it is like a place I could sit. Lynn does not answer. She just takes another cup, pours the tea, lets silence spread to fill the cooling drafts. When he leaves, she stands at the door, watching the back of his rain jacket fade down the path, and sees the painting behind her deepen by a notch. Winter comes again a week earlier. Lynn rolls up the blanket lights. The stove stands in the center of the room, listening to the small crackle of the wood. She steps back, looks at the painting for many minutes, then suddenly places a very small white dot in the upper left corner, a late star. The dot so small that if one does not know where one would not see. But when one knows, the eye turns to it, like turning back to an old promise kept. She puts down the brush folds. Her hands touches the frame gently. There is no finished, no applause, only a room exhaling the window frame, exhaling the painting, exhaling, and herself. The night passes like a river, drinking the town's sound quiet. Snow holds all footprints until morning. Outside, the red fox crosses the trail, its tail still bright for a short moment before it disappears behind the dogwood shrub. Inside the painting stands motionless in the faint glow of the stove, carrying through the year, the slowness, the imperfections, the small tremors, the places of waiting. Lynn sits on the floor, back against the wall, eyes slowly closing. In the sleep to come, she will walk the slender path down to the grass slope, sit on a wooden step before a distant house with thin smoke, and look up at the late star in the corner of the sky, small but right in its place. She knows tomorrow she will add a stroke, brighten a stroke, lengthen a stroke. And if one day the painting leaves this window frame, it will carry with it the breath of the room, the scent of sour plums after rain, the red button of winter, the advice of an apple tree, and the footsteps of a stranger who found a place to sit. But tonight it is enough. The evening light has left a little honey on the wall. The window frame stands still, like the keeper of the rhythm, and the painting with a late star, a slender road, an old maple promises nothing but this: it will be here when you return, whether you arrive early or late, whether you stand or sit, whether you bring a question or simply bring your breath. Here, you will see a very small thing that many busy days had concealed. When you allow something to grow at its own pace, it will find its own way to speak for you, with color, with wind, with a quiet hush. And when that happens, even if no curtain has yet been drawn for a grand opening, you have already stepped in. Story 8. The Tea House by the Wooden Bridge. The seaside town lay nestled in a small bay, where in the morning the mist drifted up from the water like a thin scarf draped over wooden porches. Harbor Road ran to the end of the street and stopped at a wooden bridge spanning a narrow creek that linked the bay with the salt marsh behind. Right at the bridge's entrance stood a small, pale gray house with a low roof and a glass door with hand-written blue ink. On the glass was the sign, "Tea House by the Wooden Bridge." The fishermen called it simply the Bridge Cafe. The door opened at 6 o'clock in the morning and stayed open until the first 3 flashes of the lighthouse out by the shore. The owner was Hannah, 38 years old, brown hair tied back, arms marked by the darker tan of sun. Hannah had once been a restaurant manager in the city, walking fast, talking fast, sleeping little, until the day she sat down at the train station and realized she could no longer hear herself breathe. She left her old job, came to the town, rented the house by the bridge, painted it herself, bought old wooden tables, cleaned them until the grain of the wood stood out like the fingerprint of a friend. She did not sell much. 3 main kinds of tea. A pot of ginger tea brewed each morning, a few fresh baked pastries, and a tin box of old postcards so that customers could write a few lines if they wished. She said the cafe did not need to be busy, just warm enough so that someone dropping by would feel they were no longer standing outside the night. In the morning, Hannah opened the door before the sun had yet pulled the mist from the bridge. The wind carried the scent of salt and damp wood seabirds arguing on the roof. The first footsteps across the old boards. She heated a large pot of water, rinsed the teapot, warmed the cups in her hands until they felt like someone had placed a freshly removed sweet potato from the fire into her lap. The first customer was usually Eli, the lighthouse keeper, coming down from the rock ledge in his old pickup truck, popping in to carry out a black tea. Hannah poured water for a second time, covered the pot, waited 12 beats of counting. Eli never hurried. He said, waiting until tea time sounds different. They greeted each other briefly, like two people who already knew that some questions were better left for the afternoon. Around 9 o'clock, the kayak rowers pulled in a long wake into the creek. People tied up lines. People shed life vests. Laughter, loud enough to brighten the cafe by half a degree. Hannah placed a pitcher of cold water with lemon slices and a bit of pink salt on the long table by the window. Anyone thirsty could pour. Anyone tired could sit. Anyone who needed to speak could speak. Anyone who wanted to be silent could be silent. That was the only rule at the cafe. No one had to become someone else in 15 minutes. On the wall hung a small handwritten board. No Wi-Fi quiet seats available. At midday, the light changed into a kind of salty gold. Hannah would often stand at the counter, looking through the glass, seeing little ripples on the water as fish jumped. At that time, a stranger might stop by a lost tourist, a couple who had just argued in the car, a boat repairer, whose hands still smelled of oil, a school teacher who finished early. Whoever walked in received a nod and a gentle question. Would you like a pot of tea or a mug of warmth? The tired ones usually chose the mug quick, neat, warm enough in the hand. The ones who needed to linger chose the pot. Wait a little, drink many times. Let the story have a place to turn. Once, a young man wearing a soaked knit cap walked in during the rain. His face looked puzzled, as though he had just passed a crucial turning point. He stood, hesitating, not looking at the board, not looking at the counter, only looking at his shoes. Hannah put the kettle on the stove, touched the counter lightly, then asked quietly, "Do you want a seat where there is a breeze or no breeze?" He looked up, surprised, as though he had been offered something comfortable to choose. He said, "No breeze." Hannah pulled the chair by the bright wall with fewer traces of light, placed a clean cloth on the back of the chair, pushed a small pastry toward him, and said, "Have a seat." She poured tea, asked nothing more. 10 minutes later, He exhaled long, as though a person remembered how to breathe again. Before he left in the tin box a piece of paper. "Thank you for not asking what was wrong with me." In the afternoon, the cafe had fewer people. Hannah wrote into the diary 3 short lines about the day west wind light. Fish jumped twice. One person sat quietly for 15 minutes. She did not record any names, did not write any stories. She simply cleaned up, changed the water. For the wildflowers, poured herself a warm mug of ginger tea and sat in the chair by the window, looking across the bridge. On clear days, she saw the white herons in the distant marshes. On gloomy days, she watched the streaks of rain cross the water like someone drawing a thin curtain. Some days, she missed the city. Not really missing people, but missing the sound. Here, the only sound was her own heart, that voice, long unheard, suddenly loud. Hannah learned not to turn it down. She left it there, like leaving a mug of tea on the table. No forcing, no expectation, no fear of it running out, no demand for it to fill. Late autumn, distant storms made the waves stronger. The cafe still opened. Fewer people visited, but the silence ran deep. One evening, the girl selling newspapers stopped on the porch because of the wind, crouched down to tie her shoelace. Hannah opened the door, handed her a dry towel. "Come in." The girl's hands were shaking, but her eyes were bright. Hannah poured a mug of ginger tea, placed it near the girl's hand, without saying anything about the rain. Only, "Drink this to warm yourself." The girl asked why she did not close early. Hannah said, "Someone out at night needs to see the door open." The girl nodded. After drinking, she ran away, her small raincoat like a blue kite trailing along the street. After that, every evening when the girl passed by, she looked in, raised her hand. Sometimes Hannah did not see, but still the girl raised her hand again, as if answering a shared question without words. Occasionally, on Sunday mornings, the musician Nora from Maple Street came down bringing a box of homemade cookies. The two sat at the table near the window. No music playing, only the sound of the water breathing. Nora placed her palm on the wooden tabletop, said, "Wood has rhythm too." Hannah smiled, tapped one beat with her fingertip, then stopped exactly on time. They stayed quiet for a long while, long enough for very small sounds to be heard. The board creaked softly as it changed humidity. A drop of water hit the rim of the pot. The wind chime outside the porch touched a delicate note. When Nora left, Hannah picked up a pen and wrote in the journal, Today, the wooden table breathed evenly. Near Christmas, the cafe got busier because of fish market folks and gift shoppers. Hannah hung a small wreath of fur by the door, weaved a paper string through some old postcards she found at the flea market, wrote a short wish on each card. May you have an evening warm at the hands. May you find a quiet chair. May you sleep deeply. Anyone who came for tea could pick one if they liked. An elderly woman picked the note. May you sleep deeply, and laughed, saying every night she tossed and turned because of sore legs. Hannah brought a pot of warm water for her to rest under her feet while she sat. The woman sat a while, stirred her cup with the little spoon for comfort, then said, "My legs did not get better, but my heart got lighter." Hannah wrote in the journal, "Someone laughed, although their legs hurt." One rainy afternoon, a young man carrying a small wooden box stepped in, spoke hesitantly that he wanted to give the cafe something. Hannah opened the box and saw a driftwood wind chime, thin polished wooden slats tied with twine, each slat marked by a line, short or long, like music notes. "I found it on the sand after the storm," he said. "I thought hanging it out front would be nice." Hannah thanked him and hung the chime under the eave where the breeze just brushed, and it rang, not loud, not quiet. From then on, any afternoon with a breeze, the chime would ring a few notes, making people crossing the bridge feel as if someone just called their old name. Spring arrived with new green flecks on the grassy bank leading to the bridge, with the sound of small fish flicking near the wooden posts, with the warm smell of the salt marsh mud. Hannah changed the mint tea to a new batch, more fragrant cooler. The cafe began to have regular customers who brought books, sat every day for an hour. A student came to study for exams, placed an hourglass on the table. When the sand ran out, she flipped it. A glazier repairman dozed for 10 minutes after his second tea. A sister brought her autistic younger brother, chose the table against the wall, where there was less wind, where he could look along the boards as if counting days. Hannah gradually learned each person's individual rhythm, knew who needed an extra glass of water first, who only needed the mug placed within reach. One long afternoon, Hannah stood watching rain fall in perfect parallel lines. In the cafe, there was only one person, a woman about 40. Her coat draped over the chair as though she were about to go, but did not. She poured more water into the teapot, placed it gently down, then went into the kitchen to wash a few mugs. From the sink, she looked out and saw the woman place her hand on her forehead as if checking a fever, then drop it, then raise it again. Hannah wiped her hands, turned back to the counter. did not approach. 10 minutes later, the woman stood, walked to the tin box, picked a postcard, sat down, and wrote. When paying, she handed the card to Hannah and said, "No need to read it. Just hold it for me." Hannah smiled, put the card in a wooden drawer in the counter where she kept things waiting for a day. At night, when closing up, she opened the drawer, looked at the card, did not read it. She placed her hand on the card, said quietly, "It is held." Summer came and made the cafe busier. Children ran across the bridge, the sound of flip-flops hitting the wood, crisp. Groups of tourists stopped to take photos of the bayfront, then stepped inside, requesting a glass of iced lemonade. Hannah added fans, but still kept one corner unfanned for anyone who wanted to hear the real wind. She taught a boy how to pour tea without spilling, taught a girl how to wait for the water to cool a bit so the leaves would not taste bitter. They called Hannah Tea Sister. Sometimes, Teacher Tea, sometimes, Mrs. Hannah, depending on the person. Hannah did not correct them, just smiled. Here the name you used was how you placed yourself into the story. One evening, the power went out. The whole town was dark as ink. Only the lighthouse rotated far off. Hannah placed candles on each table, closed doors, partly so the wind would not blow them out, and poured tea by touch. The cafe was full, yet strangely quiet. Voices were low, as if saving their sound to hear the candle flame. The wind chime outside the porch rang each time the breeze wandered in. Sometimes, 2 wooden slats struck and made a low chord sounding like waves hitting far away. When the electricity returned, a few people laughed softly from a fleeting sense of loss, like when the mist you are used to suddenly vanishes. Hannah turned off some of the lights so the cafe did not brighten too quickly. In the second autumn in town, Hannah hung a small sign inside the door. If you want to leave something behind, you may place it in this wooden bowl. At first, people left coins, a flower, a smooth stone. Later, they left stranger things, an old hair elastic, a scrap of cloth embroidered with someone's initial, a bead fallen from a blouse. Hannah did not put them away, just left the bowl there sometimes, cleaned it, dusted it. The bowl grew heavier, but still had space. She thought some things, when placed together with others, somehow become lighter. And then, on a morning with a north wind, the young man wearing the knit cap from before returned. His face was less puzzled now, but his eyes still held a hazy patch, like a corner of a glass not wiped. He stood at the door for a moment, looked at the wind chime, looked at the wooden bowl, looked at Hannah. "I brought this," he said. he handed a small box. Inside was an old rusty key engraved with the number 12. I do not know which door it opens. This number is not my home, but I picked it up on the bridge that day. I have kept it since then. Today, I think it does not belong to me. Hannah looked at the key for a long time, placed it into the bowl, heard a soft sound like an old story settling into place. The young man drank his tea, did not hurry. Before leaving, he wrote a postcard and dropped it into the tin box. Thank you for having a place to put things. On the last day of the year, Hannah closed the cafe earlier than usual. She slowly wiped each table, washed the teapot, and cups hung the towels on the hooks. The cafe was empty, but not hollow. Outside the wooden bridge lay still the water, dark the lighthouse, flashing steadily. Hannah sat in the chair by the window, poured herself a pot of ginger tea at day's end. She opened the wooden drawer, took out the postcard from the woman on the rainy afternoon, placed it under the teapot, as if placing a stone to hold a corner of the cloth. She did not read it. She simply let the warmth pass through the paper. When the teapot cooled, she put the postcard back, closed the drawer, and thought, holding a bit of warmth for someone else sometimes is holding it for yourself. Night fell like a long breath. The wind chime on the porch rang one low note, then fell silent. Hannah stood up, turned off the lights, leaving only the small string of lights above the pastry shelf. She pulled the door shut, locked. It tested the handle once out of habit, then stepped out onto the bridge. The wind carried the scent of salt. Water flowed beneath her feet, its rhythm steady, like a clock with no numbers. Hannah stood there for a moment, hands in her coat pockets, shoulders relaxed. Here, no one needed her to do anything more. She did not need to fix the day, did not need to end it with a perfect sentence, did not need to conclude a story. All she needed was to go home, sleep, and open the door on time the next morning. The tea house by the wooden bridge would glow again when dawn brushed the edge of the roof. The teapot would boil steam, would rise, droplets would gather on the glass door. People would pass by. Some would stop, some would not. Stories would come in, some would be told, some would stay quiet at the bottom of a cup, warming up, then cooling down. The wooden bowl would grow a little heavier. The tin box would hold one more postcard. The wind chime would learn a new chord. And among all these things, one thing would remain unchanged, where the bridge meets the shore. There would always be an open door, an empty chair, and a pot of hot water. Just enough so that anyone passing through the night would know they could sit down, no need to explain. No need to rush. No need to smile right away. Just rest. Cold hands around the cup, and let the warmth slowly make its way to where it is needed at its own pace. The 9th story. The cloud learns how to fall softly. The desert on the northern edge of Arizona spread out like a brown gold cloth sketched with chalk. The horizon so long, it seemed you could hear the earth breathing. The fragrant sagebrush stood still, sand mixed with rubble, shimmering with tiny mica particles, and towering saguaro cacti raised their arms toward the sky, as though someone might place a bit of cool into their palms. In the afternoon, the light slanted so that the red canyon walls looked like the yellowed pages of an old book. In the deep blue sky, a solitary cloud hovered. It was not large, but thick, its body white, mixed with gray, its edges slightly frayed, like an old woolen scarf. For 2 weeks, the cloud had traveled from New Mexico across sun-baked plains, through small towns with star-like names and rivers, long dry, yet it had not dropped a single raindrop. It had learnt to hold water inside, like a person clutching a letter they dared not send, afraid of losing it, afraid of dissolving, afraid that once it descended, it would no longer be itself. Down below the town of Cedar Mesa, huddled around a gas station, a general store, and a tin-roofed school. In the backyard of the library, a librarian named Alma was watering lavender bushes with water she collected from a rooftop tank. The water was clear, but scant. Alma looked up at the cloud, as though looking at a friend standing outside the porch, refusing to come in. "If you are tired," Alma said softly, her voice no louder than the library roof, "just sit down." The cloud heard her in its own way, through thin streams of air, vibrating when the sound touched. It wanted to answer that it was afraid. It had come so far, gathered so much moisture from rivers, from fields of grass, from cool highland evenings. If it fell, would it ever return? It did not know whether anyone remembered a cloud that had waited so long before daring to rain. All it knew was that up above it was whole. Below or in between, what would become of it? That afternoon, a boy named Mateo pedaled his bicycle along the dirt road, a backpack rattling with empty plastic bottles behind him. His mother, the one who baked empanadas for the whole town, had asked him to bring the bottles up to the church and fill them from the communal tank. Mateo did not look up at the sky much. He was used to weeks without rain. But when he reached the bend near the old oak tree, he stopped, looked up, and shielded his eyes with his hand. The cloud hung to the southwest like a whale holding its breath just above the water. "If you fall," he said, in that half-school, half-home English he used. "I will catch you." He laughed at his silly remark, then pedaled on the chain, whining like a story that never ends. Above, the cloud rocked very gently, as though someone had just made a small invitation, and it believed it. The next day was hotter. Wind blew in from the high plateau, carrying the scent of resin, burnt under the sun. An indigenous shepherd walked along a barbed wire fence, a faded shirt, a baseball cap pulled low. He stopped, placed his hand over his eyes to look up, then raised 2 fingers to his chest, very softly, an unspoken greeting. Then he walked on slow, so that dust lofted up around his shoes. The cloud saw that gesture, and inside it felt a subtle shift, like someone had placed a smooth stone in the palm of water. It began to lower itself a few feet no one else saw except itself. Not because of prayers for rain, but because for the first time it felt a kind of gaze that did not force it to do anything, just remembered it as part of that sky. Night came. The desert cold like a whisper of instruction. Stars blossomed thickly. The Milky Way arched a silent bridge across the darkest part of the sky. The cloud could not sleep. It drifted very slowly to the edge of a vast canyon where red rock was deeply cut by rivers long gone, leaving curved scars like fingernails of time. At the bottom of the gorge, a small stream remained its water, so clear that you could see the bottom glint like a fish's back. The cloud leaned down, felt the cool vapor rising, touching its belly like someone comforting with a damp cloth. It exhaled a bit, not rain, just a thin white breath. That breath passed over rare fern bushes, making them tremble slightly. A gray fox walked by, stopped to scent the air, its eyes shining like 2 glass beads in the night. The next morning, the town's radio talked about a small fire to the north, about water tanks running low, about not wasting. Alma closed the library early to attend a meeting with the volunteer group. Before leaving, she stopped by the lavender garden, touched a blossom that had faded, and whispered, "Hold on." The cloud stood high above, looked down, and felt its chest pinch. It suddenly thought of those winter rains of long ago, those long rains that made people sit by windows, reading books, the smell of baked dough spreading down the hall, dogs asleep by the chair legs. It remembered what it felt like to dissolve and become part of the stove of the clothes of the laughter. It did not remember anyone calling its name. It only remembered warmth and the smell of cinnamon. That afternoon, the wind shifted. From the distant salt flat thinner, streaks of clouds blew in, touching the cloud like long-lost relatives reunited. "You are still holding much," said one older streak of cloud voice, "like old paper. But if you hold forever, you will grow heavy." The cloud remained silent. It felt heavy indeed. On its edge, the first droplets had formed round clear, vibrating, lightly, like words not yet uttered. It heard children cheering in the schoolyard below, the sound of hiding from the sun under a porch, and someone strumming a banjo on a front porch, strings humming in the red dusk. All those sounds were connected by a fine thread, waiting. And then something happened. A young swallow lost its flock and flew higher than it should have. It faltered its wing, weary its flight path broken. The cloud saw it. It lowered a little again, then a little more. It expanded its belly, like opening an arm. The swallow glided past the edge of the cloud, as though crossing a cool hill on a hot day, and found the upward current again. It flapped its wings a few times, regained direction, and darted westward toward its friends, circling over a field of grass. The cloud did not see it rejoin the flock, but it knew by a very soft, sharp cry that changed pitch in that moment. The cloud understood that sometimes falling does not mean disappearing. Sometimes it is the way to keep something else going. That afternoon, the cloud began to fall. Not like a drum roll, not like rain trying to prove it was still alive. It fell softly, like someone relearning how to say a name they had not said in years. The first drops hit the school's tin roof, each making a faint ping, like someone tapping a tiny percussion instrument. In the courtyard behind the library, the dusty soil gave off a deep, earthy scent, like pages from an old book opened in a warm kitchen. The lavender bowed gently, like old friends greeting each other again. Alma stood under the awning, opened her palm, caught a drop in the center of her hand, and smiled. Not a toothy smile, just one that curled at the corners of her eyes. At the church, Mateo stood in line for water, heard the rain, and tilted his face upward. He said nothing, but the smell of rain clung to his hair like a promise. The cloud fell a little more. In the canyons, the water streamed down in thin threads, stitching sky and rock together like thread closing an old tear. Dry creeks found their voice again, first whispering to themselves, then louder, blending with the sound of rolling pebbles. Frogs somewhere in the distance found songs in their throats, tried a few low notes, then sang the whole tune. On the hot concrete at the gas station, rainwater sketched out tiny maps, little continents born and gone in minutes. An old woman walking slowly stopped, looked at one that resembled Europe in a puddle, and smiled, realizing she still had her imagination at 80 years old. Inside each drop, the cloud could hear itself breaking into pieces. Strangely, it did not hurt as much as it had expected. Each droplet leaving was not a loss, but a part of its body, finally touching what it had only seen from afar, the rim of Alma's glass, the dark hair of Mateo, the road marked with footsteps, the skin of a saguaro cactus that had grown used to being sharp, now softening where the rain touched. It did not feel smaller. It felt larger. Part of it rose like vapor. Part of it soaked into roots. Part rolled over stones, and part clung to a window edge where a child traced letters with a finger. In all of those places, the cloud was still itself, just spread out like a song, quietly sung by many in their kitchens. The rain lasted just long enough. Not so much that roads were washed away, not so little that it could not be called rain. As the sky thinned, the cloud became half its weight. It looked down at the town, not from high above, but from a slight angle, like someone stepping back to admire a painting just hung in the right spot. Sunlight from the west streamed through it, splitting into a narrow rainbow above the road leading to the fields. Mateo rode by on his bike, braked sharply, looked up, and yelled for his mom to come out of the bakery and see. Alma closed her notebook, stepped out onto the porch, and stood there for a long while. The shepherd looked up once more, touched his chest, and the cloud, for the first time since leaving the mountains, felt a new space inside itself, not cold, just open, a space made for journeys ahead. That night, the town slept in the scent of wet soil, of sage leaves pushed through the windows by the rain of old paint suddenly awake. At the library, Alma left a bowl of water for the cat that lingered by the door. It drank politely, then curled up under a chair, its breathing steady, like a sentence that did not need a period. At Mateo's home, the sound of oil sizzling empanadas hummed like light rain. His mother packed extra pastries into a basket to bring the next day to Alma and the shepherd. On the radio, someone said the small wildfire to the north had put itself out. No one called it a miracle. They just said, lucky. The cloud drifted slowly toward the edge of the skylight, but not empty. The next day, the sun rose early. The sky was blue like a freshly washed handkerchief. A small part of the cloud remained floating higher, thin as breath. It looked down at the place it had just passed through. It saw water still clinging to roof edges, puddle circles, not yet smooth, and a white shirt someone had left out overnight, now cleaner than before. It felt a sudden wish to return, but the wind called it farther, to another mountain range, to a dry plain that needed an afternoon rain, so the bucket in the well would echo again. It turned its face, carrying the leftover water in its body, and the town's sounds folded neatly like a card tucked into a shirt pocket, the ping on tin roofs, the shouts of children spotting a rainbow, the banjo playing on the porch, the breath that had just been remembered. Along the highway, cutting through the desert, a truck headed north. The driver, a man with salt and pepper hair, had the radio on low, his left hand resting lightly on the open window. He looked out and saw a thin strip of cloud moving its edge, glowing in the sun. He thought of last night's rain, how it had been a while since he told his kid to call their mother, and of the muddy streaks still on his shoes by the porch. He did not know it was the same cloud from the night before, and he did not need to. He just exhaled slowly and pressed the gas, continuing on. That afternoon, Alma returned to the library. She watered the lavender with water that had just come from the gutter into the barrel. She listened to it fall like a poem without rhyme. She wrote 3 lines in her notebook under the counter. Yesterday it rained. Today the earth smells good. Someone has learned how to fall softly. She closed the notebook, placed a smooth stone from the creek on top, and opened the door to welcome the kids after school. They were loud, but not as loud as before. One stood and stared at a puddle on the step for a long time before stepping in and laughing. Another ran to the bookshelf, asking for a book about rainbows. Alma found one and handed it over. In that moment, she heard the faintest sound, like a thank you passing through the air, not knowing who it came from, and not needing to. As for the cloud somewhere far away, night would fall again, and it might pause once more over a dry field, because that is the nature of things that once feared losing. But it had learned how to fall softly, not through logic, but through the scent of earth in Cedar Mesa, the open palm of Alma, the bicycle wheels of Mateo, the quiet greeting of the shepherd, and a young swallow finding its flock again. It would remember that to fall was not to vanish, it was to come closer, and someone down below on a night that had stayed warm for too long would open their palm under the awning, let one drop land right in the center, and smile, not a smile with teeth, just one that curled softly at the corners of the eyes, as if to say, "Welcome home." The 10th story. The clock repair shop on a corner of Yen Street. Yen Street is a small lane running parallel to the shallow stream on the west side of the town. In the morning, the sunlight slips across the corrugated roof like a thin blade polishing the day. In the afternoon, the wind drifts through the willow trees and gently flips the strands of hair that hang down toward the dry water. At the corner where Yen Street meets Station Road, there is a narrow shop, the facade painted a deep green, the low glass window just at the height a child could press her forehead against to look inside. On the glass in hand-painted white letters are the words, Horace and Son. Clock, repair rhythm, adjustment, dusting time. The words and son have faded as if a promise once fulfilled. Inside, there is the smell of clean metal, machine oil, painted wood, old from age, and repeatedly brewed black tea. These scents blend into a warm fragrance, recognizable even with closed eyes. Mr. Horace is over 70, tall and lean-shouldered, his eyes like two dark cups of tea, long at rest, calmly taking in everything. Every morning, he opens the door slightly earlier than the sign's hours hangs. A black cloth around his neck turns on the green shade desk lamp and sits in the old wooden chair placed right by the counter. His desk is lined with small plastic boxes holding screws the size of grains of sand gears, as thin as fish scales, springs coiled like the tail of a lowercase G, and clock faces. With no hands, the Arabic numerals at the 12 often faded because people look there the most. On the wall hang 12 clocks each from a different family, each with its own sound tang. Tang, tang, rather than the textbook tick, tock, tick. He does not try to make them all the same. He only wants each to speak in the voice of its own home. There is an unstated custom in the town. Whoever has just gone through a difficult season will pass by Yen Street, stand at the shop, and listen to those 12 different rhythms layering together for a few minutes. They say it feels like standing in a choir where each voice is a story. And the strange thing is, after a few minutes, one's heartbeat no longer races after the fastest or slowest, but finds its own interval. It is not magic. It is just the story of the wheels that have been dusted. One early autumn morning, Ms. Mira, an art teacher at the high school, brought in a rectangular walnut desk clock, one little corner of its case chipped. She said it had stopped running since summer, on the very day she packed up and left her old city. Maybe it is tired, she said, placing the clock on the desk, her voice like someone who had just departed. Like me. Mr. Horace nodded without asking further. He opened the back cover, tilted his ear to listen, slipped in the tweezers to lift a fine gear out of the dust, and then inserted a tiny blade, like a strand of hair, into the place where the spring had stopped. "It is not tired," he said. After a moment, it just tried to keep up with another clock hanging next to it for too long. Mira gave a very slight snort of a laugh, indistinct whether it was at the sentence sounding human or because she recognized something about it. "What shall I do?" she asked. He slid the machine oil bottle. "Closer. We'll adjust the rhythm. Slow it by 2 parts, then leave it to sleep for 1 night." He dabbed a small drop on the spindle, the oil catching the light. Outside, the sunlight moved across the willow's shadow, scattering dim coins across the tile pavement. Some days, the shop is busy people coming and going, like trains through a small station. A baker brought his kitchen wall clock, whose cord had snapped, speaking hurriedly between batches of dough. It chimes 3 minutes early. The customers are not yet here, but the bell already rings. Mr. Horace did not rush to fix the cord. He asked, "Do you ever stand still for 3 minutes in your day?" The baker looked embarrassed, then smiled. "Probably not." He handed the clock back, then let it ring early. Each time it chimes, you stand still for exactly 3 minutes. Listen to what the fermenting dough is saying. When you know you have 3 minutes, we will adjust it back to right. A week later, the man returned without the clock. "Keep it 3 minutes early." "Always," he said, "I have a place to stand in the kitchen now." At noon, the sunlight gathers on the pavement in front of the door like a warm carpet. A 4th grader girl named Elsie pushed the door in, carrying a stuffed cat whose collar held a small plastic clock. "Sir," she said, "Nini's clock doesn't chime anymore." Mr. Horace put on his glasses, bent down, soldered a small, broken plastic part of the cord, then handed it back to the girl. "But sir," she said, "I think Nini is sad, because tonight I will not hug it anymore. I sleep with my mom because she is afraid of thunder." He placed the clock in her hand. The old hand touched the little hand lightly. When it thunders, your heart is also a clock. Try putting Nini on your mother's chest. Maybe your mother will be less afraid because she can hear a small ring by her heart. The next afternoon, she ran back, panting pink. "My mom slept through, sir." Nini's clock rang enough to hear. On the wall, the 12 hanging clocks continue to converse. One loses a second every hour. One gains 1 minute each day. One occasionally refuses to ring, even though its hour has arrived. Mr. Horace does not force them. A home where someone works the night shift should not have the chime exactly at 12, he says. Let their clock miss a beat. They will be less startled. He writes a note on the back of each Mrs. Nora's house. Reduce chime. Ms. May's kitchen. Deep bell. Whitman, family living room. Keep +1 offset. He calls those offsets blessings, like a tailor leaving extra seam allowance for a person who does not match the standard pattern. From time to time, he stands up to pour tea and looks out through the glass door. On Station Street, a freight train passes slowly, its long wooden cars dragging a low, smooth rumble, like a large, gentle creature. He remembers that in his youth he used to work on the train, adjusting the station clocks, listening for the bell to signal people onto the platform. When his wife died, he left the railway line and opened his little shop. She liked the afternoons when he would be seated and polishing the clock glass under the green-shaded lamp while she grew a trellis of sweet peas in the backyard. Time is something we cannot store away, she said, but we can spread it out more beautifully. He watches his small reflection in the glass, nods. For decades now, that has been his routine, spreading out time with gears that know how to breathe. One day, a stronger than usual wind blew, and the willow by the door whipped its hair down like someone bowing deep. A young man named Jonah Boat Builder down by the riverside brought in an old pendulum clock. Its enamel dial cracked its case of walnut. It belonged to my grandfather, Jonah said. Last night, I dreamt my grandfather told me to bring it. Mr. Horace opened the case and found inside a thin, yellowed scrap of paper slipped behind the dial. If one day you lose the beat, open me and remember that home still has its own voice. He did not look at Jonah right away. He looked at the pendulum hanging uneven, like someone recovering from illness. It is not the pendulum that's tired, he said, but the listener of it is tired. Jonah gave a sad smile. These days, I'm building boats slower, our baby at home. And at night, I hear so much water in myself. Mr. Horace nodded. I'll clean the pendulum. I'll adjust the escapement. And you, every night, stand opposite it for 2 minutes. Your hand on the case, simply listen. Don't think. When the time comes, the pendulum will call you back to bed. A few days later, Jonah returned and handed him a small, smoothly finished plank to place a teapot. I thought your bench might need a spot for a teapot. On quiet afternoons, the shop sounds like a little church with its own rhythm. The green-shaded lamp pours a pool of faux daylight onto the workbench, making everything look closer. Mr. Horace pretends to be a customer for his own hanging clocks. He walks by, stops, looks up, smiles, a little nods at the little deviations he does not wish anyone to correct. People imagine time is straight. Like a string, he mutters, to a clock with a porcelain dial. But strings tangle. Fortunately, a tangle can be beautiful if you know how to untie it. The door jingles again. A young woman with hurried, tied-back hair steps in, holding a silver coin-faced alarm clock. "It keeps ringing at 4 a.m, she says, just as my child has just fallen asleep. He takes it, listens to the springs hiss, like raindrops against a raincoat. It is learning the hours of your old house. He says, "How about you change its color?" When a clock sees a new color, it believes it is somewhere else. She smiles, like a human. He winks. Clocks are humans too, only they ask less. On the first rainy day of the season, Mira comes back to collect the walnut clock. He hands it to her, advising, place it on a lower shelf so that its voice is not higher than the voices of people in the house. She nods, holds the clock, like a gentle cat. "Could I ask you for some advice?" "Not about clocks," she asks, not looking up. He thinks a moment, glancing at the gears in the tray, then says, "When you draw, if your line follows the tremor of your hand, do not correct it. Place the tremor into the background. Let it become a beat. A clock does not hate tremors. It only hates being forced silent." She smiles, thanks him, and leaves. Her shadow passes the patch of sunlight on the porch like a second hand stretching and then dissolving. News of the clock repair shop on the corner of Yen Street spreads like the scent of cinnamon, buns from the bakery opposite each morning, not loud, not fast, but steady. Some people come without a clock just to stand and listen and then go. Some leave a clock and forget it, and come back months later to find it still running, as though playing its own quiet, enduring game. Some write a scrap of paper. "Thank you for teaching me to accept a minute of misalignment." He keeps those notes in a small wooden box under a drawer. He does not read them often, but whenever he needs to remember that his work is a worthy craft, he opens the box, touches the thin papers, hears the paper on paper, like the sleeve of a loved one brushing by. One late winter evening, the town's electricity fluctuates. The light in the shop flickers 3 times, then goes out. Outside, the rain has not yet fallen, but the wind goes by like someone in a hurry. Mr. Horace lights a candle, places it in the center of his bench. The 12 hanging clocks keep their ticking steady, as hearts old enough. He removes his own old pocket watch, the gift his wife gave him when the shop opened from its thin silver chain, and places it on the bench. Its minute hand is worn at the tip, its hour hand a little heavier, the glass scratched with crosswise streaks like the path of a life. He opens the back, not to repair it, but simply to look. "You are still here," he whispers to someone who has left. "I am still listening." A gust of wind tilts the candle flame, the light licking the Roman numerals like a cat licking its front paw before sleep. The next morning, the sky is clear as someone who has just finished crying. He opens the door, as usual, hangs a scarf around his neck, turns on the green-shaded lamp, and sits. The door jingles. A middle-aged man in a rough coat carries a large wall clock. Nearly 2 people could lift together. It belonged to the little church up the hill, he says. For many years, no one heard it. We want to hear it. Mr. Horace calls Jonah passing by the street to help bring it in. They lean the wall clock against the wall, remove its face, brush away dust. Inside the spring is rusted gears, dry the cable oil run into a black ink-like film. He works each part patiently as someone untangling a necklace. That afternoon, they hang it up. He gives the pendulum a nudge, advances the hands, then steps back. "When will it ring?" the man asks. He smiles. When the church decides to listen, they laugh. A week later, the wall clock's bell rings at the first service of spring. Not loud like a tower bell, but full and warm, like a freshly baked loaf placed on a wooden table. In spring, the willow outside the door blossoms with wispy, pale green strands, like a quiet greeting. On the bench, he places something new, a wooden box with a small brass plaque. "If you would like to put in a minute here, please feel free." Whoever comes can sit, rest their hand on the edge of the box for a minute without speaking. The box grows heavier, not because something is inside it, but because more people have sat in that beat, placing their minute upon the wood. Every afternoon, he places his hand on the box, feeling his palm warm in a way he cannot explain. "A minute is not small," he says to Mira when she drops by. "It is a place for breathing." And you, who are listening to this story, if at some moment in the night you suddenly startle because an invisible hand in your chest ticks faster than usual, you may imagine yourself standing in front of the glass door of the little shop on the corner of Yen Street. The 12 hanging clocks are ticking without matching each other, yet not arguing. Inside, an old man bows under the green-shaded lamp, polishing a tiny gear with a soft cloth unhurried. You stand still. You do not need to buy. You do not need to fix anything. Just listen. There will be one rhythm among the 12 which will quietly choose you. not because it is more correct than the others, but because it aligns with the breath you just forgot. You follow it home. Place it on the threshold of your heart, like placing a little Nini's clock on her mother's chest in a thunderous night. And when you sleep, if you wake up suddenly, you just need to remember that green-shaded lamp. Remember the scent of clean machine oil. Remember the jingle of the door when someone walks in and then leaves. And remember the old repairers saying, "A clock does not hate tremors. It only hates being forced silent." You lower your arm, open your palm, as if placing a minute into the small wooden box, and you will feel very softly, very truly, a rhythm finding you again, like a bird familiar with the color of your roof, flying round and resting exactly where it belongs. When the final story comes to a close, you might feel the breath of the night slowing down. All the sounds of the day seem to have faded away, leaving only the beat of your heart, the gentle breeze brushing past the window, and the soft sound of time lying still. Every story from the past 3 hours was not just a tale, but a breath, a trickling stream, a ticking clock, hands and eyes that have learned to slow down, to return to the gentlest parts of the soul. If right now you feel even just a little lighter, a little warmer, or a little more at peace, even for a brief moment, then tonight's journey has been complete. Let sleep welcome you, like an old friend. No effort, no hiding, just letting go and allowing peace to take care of the rest. Thank you for being here, for walking with me through 10 stories of the night, stories of letting go and healing. Every evening, I will be waiting for you here again, in this quiet space where the voice and the sound will guide you back to yourself. If you would like to hear these gentle stories every night, please subscribe to the channel so that each time darkness falls, all you have to do is press play and let me walk with you through another night, slowly, gently, and peacefully, wishing you a restful sleep. May peace always find you wherever you are.